4 years is a very long time when you are carrying a broken heart. For Enzo, those 4 years felt like 4 lifetimes, each one heavier and more silent than the last. He was a man who had climbed to the very top of a dark and dangerous mountain, a mountain made of power and money and fear, but at the very peak, he found only cold wind and loneliness. He was the boss now, the one everyone whispered about, the one whose name made strong men tremble and brave men look down at their shoes. He had vaults filled with gold and stacks of cash so high they could touch the ceiling, but none of it could buy him a single moment of peace. None of it could bring back the warm, gentle light that had once filled his life. That light had a name, and that name was Lily. Before he was the great and fearsome Enzo, he was just a young man with a fiery heart and a desperate dream. He was not born into the world of silken suits and dark deals. He had clawed his way up from the dirty streets, where every meal was a fight and every night was a gamble. He was smart, and he was quick, and he was hungry for a life that was better than the one he had. He worked for a man who was kind to him, a man who saw the potential in his sharp eyes and steady hands. But that man was old, and the world of the mafia was a world that ate the kind and the old for breakfast. When that man died, a great and terrible war started, and Enzo was right in the middle of it. He was not fighting for money or for power. He was fighting for a small, cramped apartment with a leaky faucet and a broken window, a place he shared with the only person who had ever made him feel like he was worth something. That person was Lily. Lily was not a part of his dark world. She was a girl who worked at a tiny flower shop that smelled of earth and sunshine. She had a smile that could crack the hardest ice and eyes that held the gentle blue of a summer sky. She was kind and patient, and she never once asked Enzo where he got the money to pay for their small dinners or the new coat she needed for the winter. She just loved him. She loved him with a pure and simple love that asked for nothing in return. She would wait for him late into the night, a plate of food kept warm on the stove, her head nodding with sleep, but her heart always awake for the sound of his key in the lock. She was his harbor in a terrible storm, the only soft place in a world made of sharp edges and broken glass. Enzo would hold her in his arms and whisper promises into her hair. He promised her a house with a garden, a life without fear, a future where the only danger they faced was deciding what flower to plant next. He meant every single word with every single beat of his heart. But the storm was already gathering on the horizon, dark and fierce. There was another man in the city, a man named Tony, who had eyes as cold as a snake and a heart that was empty and black. Tony had wanted to be the boss for a very long time. He saw Enzo as a weed that needed to be pulled out by the roots. He saw Lily as the weakness he could exploit. Tony was not just a rival. He was a predator who loved to see other people suffer. He had spies everywhere. Men who watched and listened and reported every little thing. He knew about the flower shop. He knew about the small apartment. He knew that Enzo would do anything, absolutely anything, to protect the girl with the summer sky eyes. And Tony smiled a horrible, ugly smile because he knew exactly how to break a man. You do not break a man by hitting him. You break a man by taking away the thing he loves the most and making him watch it shatter. The night it happened, the night everything changed forever, was a night of heavy, unforgiving rain. The kind of rain that pounds against the windows and fills the streets with rushing water. A rain that seems to wash away all the color from the world and leave only gray and black. Enzo had just finished a meeting with his men. He was tired, bone tired, but the thought of going home to Lily made his tiredness feel like a small, bearable thing. He was walking through the wet streets, his collar turned up against the cold, when his phone buzzed with a message that turned his blood to ice. It was a picture of Lily, her face pale with fear, a dark shadow behind her that was the shape of a man with a gun. The message said, "Come home if you want to see her breathe. Come alone." Enzo ran. He ran faster than he had ever run in his life. The rain blinded him, the wind howled in his ears, but he did not stop. He did not feel the cold. He did not feel the sharp stones cutting into his feet. He felt only a terror so deep and so vast that it swallowed everything else. He burst through the door of his apartment, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his heart pounding like a trapped bird against his ribs. And there they were, Tony, standing in the middle of the room like a king in a castle of broken things. And Lily, held tight by one of Tony's goons, a gun pressed against her temple. Her eyes were wide and wet with tears, but she did not cry out. She was trying to be brave for him. Even in the face of a gun, she was trying to be brave for Enzo. Tony laughed. It was a cold, dry sound, like stones rattling in a can. "Look at you," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "The great Enzo, running through the rain like a lost puppy. You think you can have it all, don't you? You think you can have the power and the girl and the happy little life? Well, I am here to teach you a lesson. The world does not work that way." He walked around Enzo, circling him like a shark. "I am going to give you a choice, my friend. A very simple choice. You can keep the girl, and I will put a bullet in her brain right now. Or you can let her go. You can send her away. You can break her heart so completely that she never comes back. And in return, I will let her walk out that door. I will let her live. What is it going to be? Her life or her love?" Enzo's mind went blank. He looked at Tony, and he saw the truth in his cold, snake-like eyes. Tony was not bluffing. He was a killer. He would enjoy pulling the trigger. Then Enzo looked at Lily. He looked at her beautiful face, her trembling lips, her eyes that were full of love and fear, all mixed together. He saw the small, gentle soul that had been his only light in the darkness. And he knew, with a pain that felt like his own heart being ripped from his chest, that he had to let her go. He had to save her life. He had to save her, even if it meant destroying himself. Even if it meant making her hate him forever. He took a deep, ragged breath. The air in the room was thick with tension and the smell of rain and fear. He could not look at her face. If he looked at her face, he would break. He would fall to his knees and beg for a different ending. So he looked at the floor, at the cheap, worn-out rug that Lily had bought from a street market. He spoke, and his voice was a horrible, hollow thing, a voice that did not sound like his own. He said, "Lily, I do not love you. I never loved you. You were just a game to me, a little bit of fun. You are nothing. You are less than nothing. You are a burden I have been carrying for too long. Get out. Get out of my life and never come back." Lily gasped. It was a small, wounded sound, like a bird that had been shot out of the sky. She said his name, Enzo. Her voice was tiny, full of confusion and disbelief. She did not understand. She thought she knew him. She thought their love was real. He forced himself to look up at her. He forced his face into a mask of cold cruelty. He made his eyes hard and flat. He looked at her as if she were a stranger, as if she were nothing more than a piece of trash on the sidewalk. "Get out," he screamed, his voice breaking on the last word. "I said get out. I do not want you. I have someone else. Someone better. Someone who fits into my new life. You are a mistake, Lily. A mistake I am finally correcting." Tony laughed again, a triumphant, gleeful sound. He nodded at his goon, who let go of Lily. Lily stumbled forward, her legs shaky. She looked at Enzo, her eyes searching his face for any sign of the man she loved. She found nothing. She saw only a stranger with a cold heart and a cruel mouth. She did not know that his eyes were burning with tears he was forcing not to fall. She did not know that his hands, clenched into fists at his sides, were shaking with a grief so heavy it was a miracle he could stand. She did not know that he was breaking inside, shattering into a million sharp pieces that would cut him forever. She saw only the lie, and the lie was so real, so perfectly acted, that it destroyed her. She turned and ran. She ran out the door and into the cold, unforgiving rain. She ran down the stairs and into the dark, wet street. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs gave out, and she collapsed in a puddle on the sidewalk, sobbing into her hands. The rain mixed with her tears, washing away the last traces of her hope. She picked herself up, a broken, hollow shell, and she kept walking. She walked out of that neighborhood. She walked out of that city. She walked away from the only life she had ever known, carrying a heart that had been smashed into dust. And Enzo, the man who had just broken his own soul to save it, stood in the empty apartment. He stood there for a long time, not moving, not speaking. The rain was still pounding against the windows. Tony and his men had left, laughing and slapping each other on the back like they had just won a great victory. Enzo walked to the window and pressed his forehead against the cold glass. He looked down at the empty street, at the puddles of water that reflected the dim, yellow streetlights. She was gone. She was really gone. He had done the only thing he could do to save her life, but in doing it, he had murdered her love for him. He had murdered his own heart. He sank to his knees on the floor, the same floor where she used to dance around while cooking dinner, and he let out a scream. It was a long, gut-wrenching sound of pure, unadulterated agony. The man who would one day be the most powerful mafia boss in the city knelt on the floor of his tiny, empty apartment and cried like a child who had lost his mother. The days that followed were a blur of cold routine. Enzo did not mourn openly. He did not allow anyone to see his pain. Instead, he channeled it into a cold, fierce ambition. He had been saved by a lie, and the lie had cost him everything. He decided, with a heart made of stone, that he would never be weak again. He would never let anyone have that kind of power over him. He would become so strong, so untouchable, that no one could ever make him choose between love and life again. He went after Tony with a vengeance. He dismantled Tony's entire operation, piece by piece. He took his men, his money, his power. He took everything Tony had ever wanted and made it his own. In the end, Tony was left with nothing, a broken and beaten man who had to flee the city to save his own skin. Enzo had won. He had achieved his goal. He was the undisputed boss. But he was alone. The apartment was replaced by a huge, silent mansion. The cheap dinners were replaced by lavish feasts he could not eat. The warm embrace of Lily was replaced by cold, empty sheets. For years passed, and he did not smile once. He did not laugh. He did not allow himself to feel. He kept a single, worn-out photograph of Lily in his pocket, and every night, before he went to sleep, he would take it out and look at it. He would trace the outline of her face with his finger and whisper an apology to the empty room. He had saved her life, but he had damned himself to a life of miserable solitude. And he thought, in his darkest moments, that was the punishment he deserved. 4 years is a very long time when you are carrying a broken heart. But for Enzo, it felt like the world had stopped spinning on the night Lily ran away. Everything after that was just a dull, gray haze of duty and power. He had built his empire, yes. He had a fortress of a home, a fleet of cars that gleamed like black jewels, and an army of men who would jump off a cliff if he told them to. He was feared and respected, but he was also known as the Iceman. He never laughed. He never smiled. He barely spoke more than a few words at a time. His men whispered that he had no heart, that the boss was a machine, a cold, calculating machine that only knew how to make money and crush enemies. They did not know about the photograph in his pocket. They did not know about the broken apartment and the pouring rain. They did not know about the girl with the summer sky eyes who had stolen his soul and vanished into the night. On the evening this story continues, Enzo was attending one of those big, fancy parties that he absolutely hated. It was a charity event, a gathering of the richest and most powerful people in the city. They were all dressed in sparkling gowns and sharp suits, laughing and clinking glasses of expensive champagne. They smiled at each other with their mouths, but their eyes were always calculating, always looking for an angle. Enzo stood in the corner with a glass of water in his hand. He did not drink alcohol. He needed to keep his mind sharp. He watched the crowd swirl around him like a school of colorful, mindless fish. His best friend, Marco, stood beside him. Marco was a big, loyal man with a kind face and a steady heart. He had been with Enzo from the very beginning. He was the only person in the world who knew the real reason for Enzo's coldness. "Boss, you need to try to relax," Marco said, his voice low. "At least pretend to have a good time. These people are our partners. We need them to trust us. Enzo just shook his head. I do not care if they trust me. They fear me. That is enough. He took a sip of his water. His eyes were scanning the room, but he was not seeing any of the rich guests. He was seeing a tiny, cramped apartment. He was hearing a soft voice humming a lullaby. I need some air, he said abruptly. He walked away from Marco, through the crowd of tuxedos and glittering jewels. They parted for him like the Red Sea, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and terror. He walked out onto a large, quiet balcony. The city spread out before him like a blanket of twinkling lights. The cool night air felt good on his face. He leaned against the stone railing and closed his eyes. He thought about how empty his life was. He had all this power, all this money, and yet he was the most miserable man in the city. He was a king with no queen, a ruler with no one to share his life with. He remembered Lily's laugh. It was a light, bubbling sound that could make him smile even on his worst days. He remembered the way she would push her hair behind her ear when she was concentrating on arranging a bouquet of flowers. He remembered the taste of her lips, warm and sweet like honey. His heart ached with a familiar, dull pain. He opened his eyes and looked down at the busy street far below. He saw the tiny figures of people walking on the sidewalks, cars rushing by, the bright neon signs of shops and restaurants. And then his heart stopped. He saw a small flower stand on the corner. It was a simple, wooden cart covered with buckets of colorful blooms. And standing behind the cart, her hands busy arranging a bundle of roses, was a girl with brown hair and a face he had seen in his dreams every single night for 4 years. It was Lily. It was her. There was no mistaking it. He knew the curve of her neck. He knew the way she tilted her head. He knew the way her fingers moved with such gentle grace. His body reacted before his mind could catch up. He pushed himself off the railing and ran. He ran through the party, past the startled guests and the confused waiters. He did not wait for the elevator. He took the stairs, his feet pounding on the metal steps, 3 and 4 at a time. He burst out of the lobby and onto the street. He ran across the pavement, dodging cars and people. He had to see her. He had to touch her. He had to make sure she was real. He slowed down as he reached the corner. He was out of breath, his heart beating so fast he thought it might explode. He stood a few feet away from the flower stand, just watching her. She was even more beautiful than he remembered. Her hair was longer, tied back in a loose, messy bun. Her face was a little thinner, and there was a shadow of sadness in her eyes that had not been there before. But she was still Lily, the girl he had loved, the girl he had lost. He took a step closer. She was humming a song under her breath, a soft, sad melody. A customer came up and bought a small bouquet of white daisies. Lily smiled and thanked them, a polite, professional smile that did not reach her eyes. When the customer left, Enzo finally found his voice. It came out as a rough, broken whisper. Lily. She froze. Her whole body went still, like a deer that has just sensed a predator. She did not turn around. She just stood there, her hands trembling over the flowers. Enzo took another step closer. He could see her shoulders shaking. Lily, please. Please look at me. She shook her head. Her voice was thick with emotion, with a mixture of surprise and old, deep hurt. No, no, you are not here. You are a ghost. You are just a bad dream. She finally turned around, and when she saw him, her face went pale. Her eyes, those beautiful summer sky eyes, filled with tears. Enzo, she breathed, and his name on her lips was both the sweetest and the most painful sound he had ever heard. I have looked for you for 4 years, he said, his voice cracking. Every day, every night. I have looked for you everywhere. I never stopped hoping. Lily took a step back, her back hitting the wooden cart. You looked for me? You threw me away like garbage. You screamed at me. You told me I was nothing. You broke my heart into 1,000 pieces, Enzo. You cannot just show up after 4 years and tell me you have been looking for me. Her voice was shaking with anger and pain. Tears were streaming down her face. How dare you? How dare you stand here and say that to me? Enzo felt his own tears sting his eyes. He had not cried since that night in the rain, but now the dam was breaking. I know. I know what I did. I know what I said. You have every right to hate me. You should hate me. But I am begging you, Lily. Just give me 1 minute. Just let me explain. Please." His voice was so full of desperate, raw emotion that it made Lily pause. She looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the deep lines of sorrow on his face. She saw the way his eyes were red-rimmed and wet. She saw that the great and powerful mafia boss was standing in front of her, begging like a common beggar. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "You have 1 minute," she said, her voice flat and cold. "Then I am leaving." Enzo took a deep, shaky breath. That night, in the apartment. That was not me. That was an act. The man I was fighting, the one I was at war with, his name is Tony. He had a gun to your head, Lily. He was going to kill you. He gave me a choice. He said if I didn't send you away, if I didn't break your heart, he would murder you right in front of me. The words rushed out of him like water from a broken dam. I had to do it. I had to save your life. It was the only way. I would rather have you hate me for the rest of my life than see you dead on that floor. I chose the lie to save you. I chose your life over my own heart. Every word I said that night was a lie. I have never stopped loving you for 1 single second. Not for 1 second, Lily. Lily stared at him. The anger in her eyes flickered and then died. A new emotion took its place. Shock. Disbelief. Then, slowly, understanding. She remembered the feeling of the cold metal against her temple. She remembered the terror in Enzo's eyes, a terror she had mistaken for coldness. She remembered the way he had screamed at her, his voice breaking. She had thought he was angry, but now she realized it was grief. He had been in agony. He had sacrificed her love to keep her alive. "Oh, Enzo," she whispered. Her voice was soft now, full of pity. All this time I thought you hated me. I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought I had done something wrong." Enzo reached into his pocket and pulled out the worn, faded photograph. It was a picture of them together, taken on a sunny day in a park. He was smiling, something he rarely did, and she was laughing, her head thrown back. He held it out to her. "I have carried this with me every single day. I have looked at it every single night. It is the only thing that has kept me going. The only thing that reminded me why I was still breathing. I love you, Lily. I have never stopped loving you. I will never stop loving you. You are my heart. You are my soul. You are everything." Lily took the photograph. Her fingers brushed against his, and a jolt of electricity shot through her. She looked at the happy faces in the picture, two young people who had no idea what the future held for them. She remembered the love. She remembered the laughter. She remembered the nights she had spent waiting for him, never knowing if he would come back. But she also remembered the rain. She remembered the pain. Could she trust him again? Could she open her heart to the man who had broken it so completely? She looked up into his eyes. She saw the years of suffering reflected there. She saw his soul, bruised and battered, but still full of love for her. And the wall she had built around her heart began to crumble. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Her hands were shaking. She reached up and touched his face. His skin was warm and rough with stubble. "You were so cruel," she whispered. "I thought I would die from the pain." Enzo closed his eyes and leaned into her touch. "I know. I am so sorry. I will never forgive myself for the words I said. But I will spend the rest of my life trying to earn your forgiveness." Lily started to cry again, but these were not tears of pain. They were tears of relief. Tears of joy. "I don't hate you, Enzo," she said. "I wish I could. I want to hate you. It would be so much easier. But I can't. I never could. I love you. I have always loved you." Enzo pulled her into his arms. He held her so tight, so close, as if he was afraid she might disappear again. He buried his face in her hair and breathed in her scent. It smelled of flowers and the faint, sweet smell of her own skin. He was finally home. After 4 long, cold, empty years, he was finally home. They stood there on the busy street corner, wrapped in each other's arms, while the city rushed around them. The world had stopped. The only thing that mattered was the beating of their 2 hearts, reunited at last. Marco, who had been watching from the doorway of the building, let out a long, slow sigh. He had never seen his boss look so alive, so human. He quietly turned and walked away, giving them their privacy. The journey to reclaim their love was just beginning. But at least, after 4 years of darkness, there was finally a flicker of light. The world felt new to Enzo. For 4 years, it had been a gray, colorless place, a landscape of duty and emptiness. Now, standing in the middle of that busy street, holding Lily in his arms, the colors had all come rushing back. The streetlights looked brighter. The smell of the city was no longer just exhaust fumes. It was the smell of possibility. He was still a mafia boss. He still had enemies lurking in the shadows. But for the first time in a very long time, he felt hope. He gently pulled away and looked down at Lily's face. Her cheeks were wet with tears, but there was a smile, a small, trembling, beautiful smile, on her lips. "You are here," he whispered, as if saying it out loud would make it more real. "You are really here." Lily nodded, her fingers still intertwined with his. "I was so scared, Enzo. I was scared for so long. But I think I was more scared of never seeing you again than I was of seeing you." She laughed, a wet, shaky laugh. "I know that doesn't make any sense." He led her away from the flower stand. He picked up a few of her things and tucked them under his arm. They walked a little way down the street to a small, quiet cafe. The cafe was almost empty. A few old men were reading newspapers in the back corner. Enzo ordered 2 cups of hot chocolate. He remembered that Lily loved hot chocolate, the kind with the little marshmallows floating on top. When the mugs arrived, he pushed one towards her. She wrapped her hands around the warm cup and took a sip. Her eyes fluttered closed for a moment. When she opened them again, the shadow of sadness in them was still there, but it was fainter now, like a cloud that was slowly passing away. "Tell me everything," he said softly. "Tell me what happened after you ran away." Lily's face grew serious. She told him how she had wandered the streets that night, soaking wet and heartbroken. She had no money, no family to turn to. Her parents had both died when she was young. She had only had Enzo. And now, she had no one. She had found shelter in a city shelter for a few nights. Then she had found a job at a flower warehouse, packing flowers into boxes for delivery. It was hard work, but it kept her busy. And being surrounded by flowers, with their sweet smells and bright colors, it was the only thing that made her feel a little closer to the happiness she had lost. "I told myself I would never love anyone again," she said, her voice quiet. "I locked my heart away. I decided it was safer that way. I never looked for you. I was too afraid that you had found someone else, that you were happy, that you had forgotten all about me." Enzo reached across the table and took her hand. "I will never forget you, Lily. I could not forget you if I tried. You are a part of me. I thought about you every single second. I had Marco search for you. He looked everywhere. He even hired a private detective to track you down. But you had changed your name. You had moved from city to city. You were like a ghost." Lily nodded. "I didn't want to be found. I wanted to disappear. But part of me, a very small part of me, must have wanted you to find me. That is why I came back to this city. I don't know why. I just felt pulled back here. I got a job at the flower stand, and I started to rebuild my life. I thought I was doing okay. I thought I was finally moving on. But then you showed up, and all those feelings came flooding back. I am sorry you had to go through all of that," Enzo said, his voice thick with emotion. "I am sorry for the pain I caused you. I know saying sorry is not enough, but I will do everything in my power to make it up to you. I will never, ever let anyone hurt you again." He squeezed her hand. "I am going to leave the life, Lily. I am going to walk away from all of it. The money, the power, the violence. I am going to leave it all behind and start a new life. A clean life. A life with you." Lily's eyes widened. "But Enzo, you cannot just leave. These people, this life, it is dangerous. They will not just let you walk away." Enzo shook his head. "I know. It will be dangerous. It will be difficult. But I will do it. I will do anything to be with you. I am not the same man I was 4 years ago. I have more power now, more resources. I can protect us. We can disappear. We can go somewhere far away, somewhere quiet, where no one knows my name. We can be happy." Lily looked at him. She could see the determination in his eyes. She could see the love, but she could also see the worry. She knew the kind of world he lived in. She had witnessed its cruelty firsthand. "Are you sure, Enzo?" she asked. "Are you sure you can leave it all behind? It is all you have known for so long." Enzo stood up, pulling her to her feet. He cupped her face in his hands. "I am sure," he said firmly. "The only thing I have known that is worth anything is you. You are my home. You are my family. I have money enough to last us several lifetimes. We will not be rich in the way the world sees it, but we will be rich in love and in peace. That is all I want. That is all I have ever wanted." As he spoke those words, a dark figure appeared in the doorway of the cafe. It was Marco. His face was pale and serious. He walked over to Enzo and whispered something in his ear. Enzo's jaw tightened. The warmth in his eyes vanished, replaced by a cold, hard look. He turned to Lily. "We have to go? Now." Lily's heart began to beat fast. "What is it? What is happening?" Enzo pulled her towards the back door of the cafe. "It is Tony," he said, his voice low and urgent. "He is back. He knows I found you. He is coming for us." They rushed out the back door into a dark, narrow alley. Marco was right behind them. "There is a car waiting on the next street," Marco said. "I will draw them away. You have to get to the safe house." Enzo nodded. He looked at Lily. "Stay close to me. Do not let go of my hand." They ran. They ran through the alleys, their footsteps echoing off the wet walls. They could hear shouting behind them. They could hear the screech of tires. Tony had found them, and he was not going to let them escape. They made it to the car. Enzo pushed Lily into the back seat and jumped in beside her. Marco slammed the door and ran off in the opposite direction. The car screeched away from the curb. Lily looked out the back window. She saw a black van with tinted windows speeding after them. "Enzo," she cried. He held her tight. "It is okay. It is okay. I have got you. I will not let him take you." The chase was terrifying. The cars weaved in and out of traffic, speeding through red lights and narrow streets. Enzo's driver was a master of the road, and he managed to lose the black van after a harrowing 20-minute chase. They finally pulled into a secure, hidden garage. Enzo helped Lily out of the car. Her legs were weak and shaking. "It is over for now," he said, his voice soothing. "We are safe. This is our safe house. No one knows about this place. No one can find us here." They went inside the small, cozy apartment. It was humble, a far cry from the huge mansion Enzo owned, but it was warm and safe. Lily collapsed onto the couch, her whole body trembling. Enzo knelt beside her. His face was a mask of worry and anger. "I am so sorry," he said. "I am so sorry you were dragged into this again. I told you I would protect you, and I meant it." Lily took a deep, shaky breath. "It is okay," she said. "I am not scared when I am with you." She reached out and touched his face. "But we cannot run forever, Enzo. We have to do something. We have to stop him. He will never stop hunting us." Enzo looked at her. He knew she was right. He could not spend the rest of his life running from a shadow. He had to end this, once and for all. He made a decision. A dangerous decision. "I am going to find Tony," he said. "I am going to confront him. I am going to end this war." Lily's eyes filled with fear. "No, Enzo. It is too dangerous. He will kill you." Enzo shook his head. "He will try, but I have been preparing for this fight for 4 years. I am ready for him. I need you to stay here, in this safe house. Marco will protect you. I need you to promise me you will not leave this place until I come back for you." Lily looked into his eyes. She could see he had already made up his mind. She could not change it. "Promise me you will come back," she said, her voice breaking. "Promise me you will not die." Enzo leaned in and kissed her forehead. "I promise. I will come back for you. We will have our life together. I will not let anything stand in our way." He held her tightly for a long, long moment. Then, with a heavy heart, he let her go. He walked to the door and gave Marco a final set of instructions. Then he was gone. Lily was alone in the quiet, safe apartment. She wrapped her arms around herself and began to pray. She prayed for Enzo's safety. She prayed for the war to be over. She prayed for a second chance at the life they had dreamed of. The minutes ticked by. The hours stretched out. Every sound made her jump. She was alone in the darkness. waiting for the man she loved to return from a battle she could not even imagine. The night was long. The minutes felt like hours, and the hours felt like years. Lily sat on the edge of the couch in the safe house, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She could not eat. She could not sleep. She could only stare at the door, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The only sound in the room was the soft ticking of an old clock on the mantelpiece and the occasional distant wail of a siren outside. Her mind was filled with terrifying images. She saw Enzo in a dark alley, surrounded by men with guns. She saw him on the ground, his eyes closed. She shook her head violently to dispel the thoughts. He promised, she whispered to herself. He made me a promise. He will come back. But doubt, that cruel and persistent shadow, whispered back at her. What if he doesn't? What if he never comes back? She thought about their story. It was a story of love and loss, of sacrifice and suffering. She had been so angry at him for so long. She had spent 4 years hating the memory of him, building a wall around her heart to keep the pain out. But now she understood. She understood the terrible choice he had been forced to make. He had chosen to be the villain in her story so that she could have a happy ending. He had taken all the pain and all the blame upon himself, just to keep her alive. That was not the act of a cold, cruel man. That was the act of a man who loved her so deeply, so completely, that he was willing to sacrifice his own happiness for hers. And now, he had gone out to fight one more battle. He had gone out to slay the dragon, to end the war, so that they could finally be together. She knew she had to be brave. She had to trust him. She had to believe that their love was stronger than the hate that was hunting them. Hours later, just as the first pale light of dawn began to creep through the window, she heard a sound. A car pulling into the garage. The sound of a door opening and closing. Footsteps. Heavy, tired footsteps. And then, the key turning in the lock of the apartment door. The door swung open, and there he was. Enzo. He was standing in the doorway. He looked exhausted. His clothes were dirty and torn. There was a small cut on his cheek, and a dark bruise forming on his jaw. But he was alive. He was standing, and he was alive. Lily let out a sob of pure, unadulterated relief. She launched herself off the couch and ran into his arms. He caught her, holding her close. He was a little unsteady on his feet, but he held her tight. I kept my promise, he whispered into her hair. I came back. Lily pulled back to look at his face. She touched the cut on his cheek with a trembling finger. What happened? Are you hurt? Is it over? Enzo nodded slowly. It is over. Tony is gone. He will never bother us again. He did not go into the details. He did not tell her about the brutal confrontation that had taken place in an abandoned warehouse. He did not tell her about the fight, the violence, the final, decisive moment that had ended the threat. He did not want to burden her with the darkness. He just wanted her to know that they were safe. It is over, he repeated, his voice full of quiet finality. It is finally over. They held each other for a long, long time. The fear and the tension slowly melted away. They were safe. They were together. And that was all that mattered. After a while, Enzo pulled away. He took her hand and led her outside. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. The city was quiet, still sleeping. The air was fresh and clean, smelling of dew and new beginnings. They walked down the empty streets until they reached a small, familiar corner. It was the corner where her flower stand had been. The stand was still there, covered with a tarp to protect it from the night. Enzo led her over to it. He lifted the tarp and folded it neatly. He turned to look at her. His eyes were tired, but they were full of love. A love so deep and so powerful that it seemed to fill the whole morning with its warmth. Lily looked at him, her heart full of joy and wonder. What are we doing here? She asked, her voice soft. Enzo smiled. It was a small, shy smile, unlike the cold, hard smiles he had worn for so many years. He reached into his pocket. He did not pull out a fancy, diamond-encrusted ring. He pulled out something far more precious. He pulled out a single, perfect red rose. He held it out to her. Lily, he said, his voice a little shaky. I have dreamed of this moment for 4 years. I have planned it 1,000 times in my head. But now that it is here, I do not have a fancy speech. I just have the truth. You are the most beautiful, kindest, bravest person I have ever known. You have seen me at my worst. You have seen me at my most broken. And you still love me. You still chose to believe in me. I cannot offer you a life of luxury or a life of ease. But I can offer you a life of love. I can offer you my heart, which is yours and has always been yours. I can offer you my promise. A promise that I will never lie to you again. A promise that I will always protect you. A promise that I will love you for the rest of my life and beyond. He knelt down on the pavement. He knelt on the hard, dirty ground, the great and powerful mafia boss, and he held up the single red rose. Lily, will you marry me? Lily felt her heart swell. Tears of joy streamed down her face. She had dreamed of this moment too. She had dreamed of it, and she had feared she would never see it. She reached out and took the rose from his hand. She touched the soft, velvety petals. It was not a diamond ring, but it was so much more. It was a symbol of his love. It was a symbol of the new life they were about to build. Yes, she said, her voice choked with emotion. Yes, Enzo. Yes, I will marry you. He stood up and swept her into his arms, spinning her around in a tight circle. They laughed and cried at the same time. Two people who had been lost in the dark for so long, finally finding their way home to each other. The days that followed were a whirlwind of joyful activity. Enzo kept his promise. He walked away from the mafia life completely. He transferred his vast fortune to a series of hidden accounts. He sold his huge, empty mansion and bought a small, comfortable cottage on the outskirts of the city. The cottage had a big, sunny garden, and it was there, in that garden, that Lily opened her own flower shop. It was a dream come true. She named the shop The Promise, in memory of the promise Enzo had made to her in the rain, and the promise he had made to her with a single red rose. Every morning, she would wake up in his arms, the sunlight streaming through the window. She would listen to the birds singing in the garden, and she would know that she was safe. She would know that she was loved. Enzo took on a new life. He was no longer the fearsome mafia boss. He was just a man who loved his wife and his garden. He learned to tend to the flowers, though his hands, which had once held guns, were clumsy with a pair of gardening shears. He made Lily laugh with his attempts. He would get dirt on his nose and leaves in his hair, and he would look at her with that same shy, happy smile she had first seen on the morning of their engagement. They would sit on the porch in the evenings, sipping tea and watching the sunset. They would talk about their future. They would talk about having children, a little boy with Lily's eyes and a little girl with Enzo's stubborn chin. They had come so far. They had weathered the storm. And now, they were finally enjoying the peaceful sun that follows the rain. One evening, when the garden was full of blooming flowers and the air was thick with the scent of honeysuckle, Enzo took Lily's hand. I was so scared that night in the rain, he confessed. I was more scared than I had ever been in my life. Not for myself, but for you. I thought I had lost you forever. Lily leaned her head on his shoulder. I was scared too, she said. I was scared and alone. But I never stopped loving you. I tried to hate you, but my heart would not let me. Enzo kissed her forehead. I love you more than all the flowers in your garden, more than all the stars in the sky. Lily smiled. And I love you more than all the promises ever made. They sat in comfortable silence, their hands intertwined, their hearts beating as one. Their love story was not a fairy tale. It was real. It was messy. It was painful. But it was beautiful. And it was theirs. They got married in the garden on a warm summer's day. Lily wore a simple white dress and a crown of fresh daisies in her hair. Enzo wore a clean, white shirt and a smile that never left his face. Marco was the best man, and he cried like a baby during the ceremony. There were no gangsters, no threats, no fear. There was only love. The small crowd of friends and neighbors clapped and cheered as they exchanged their vows. Enzo looked into Lily's eyes and repeated the words he had whispered to her in the rain. But this time, they were not a lie. They were a promise. I will love you forever. I will protect you forever. You are my heart, my soul, my everything." And Lily, with her summer sky eyes full of tears, said, "And I will be yours for all the days of my life." The sun set on the garden, casting a golden glow over the new couple. They were surrounded by friends and flowers and love. The past was behind them, with all its pain and sorrow. The future was wide open, full of possibility and hope. They had been through the fire, and they had come out stronger. They had found their way back to each other. And that, Enzo knew, was the greatest victory of all. He had been the most powerful man in the city, but he had never felt as powerful or as rich as he did in that moment, holding the hand of the woman he loved, surrounded by the peace they had fought so hard to achieve. He had finally kept his promise. The promise to love her. The promise to protect her. The promise for forever. The end, or perhaps just the beginning of their beautiful new life. If Enzo and Lily's story touched your heart, then you know that love is worth fighting for. It is a force that can overcome any obstacle, heal any wound, and light up the darkest night. Never give up on the ones you love. Never stop believing in second chances. And always, always keep the promises you make to the people who matter most in your life. Because in the end, it is not the power or the money that counts. It is the love we share and the promises we keep. Share this story with someone you love and remind them that they are your heart, your soul, your everything. And if you are still searching for your own happy ending, do not lose hope. Sometimes the rain must fall, but the sun always, always shines again.